Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. For this episode, guys, what I wanted to talk about is a subject that, that's been on my mind, ever since I did my video, concerning my game wall. And basically what the topic I wanted to talk to you about is that I wanted to share with you what my 5 rules are when it comes to collecting video games. I've been collecting video games for about 8 to 9 years now, and I'm very strict about the rules that I have when it comes to collecting video games. I think when it comes to collecting anything, you have to give yourself some kind of limit, or you have to give yourself some boundaries just to make sure that the collection never gets out of hand. Because for me, I really want to firmly believe that my money is going to something that I absolutely want, and that I know I'm going to appreciate. But it's sometimes easy to let your collecting get out of hand. And basically what I wanted to share with you guys is what my 5 most fundamental rules are. I think when it comes to collecting anything, you have to make sure that that you're in control of the collecting, and that the collecting never takes control of you. Sometimes it's very easy to get overwhelmed. So anyway, guys, my first fundamental rule is something that all of you guys are definitely aware of, is that I only collect anime style games, guides, and figurines. Now, I went into great detail on an earlier video, why I simply stick to the anime style games, and why I like them so much. But a point that one of my friends brought up on one of my earlier videos is, he thinks that, I'm really denying myself, by not playing a lot of the more popular titles, or like some of the AAA titles that, a lot of people play, because by going anime game exclusive, I haven't played a lot of games from series that people absolutely love, games such as Portal, BioShock, Uncharted, Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, and several others. But to me, those games don't really interest me, no matter how much praise that they absolutely get. It's not that I think that they're bad games. I really don't think that they are. I think they deserve all the praise and all the high scores that they actually get. But for me, it's something that I'm not interested in. But I'll be completely honest, guys. Some of those games do interest me. I would eventually love to play the Uncharted series, and especially BioShock, just because of the numerous things I keep hearing about it, because I barely watched any kind of gameplay footage or like anything along those lines. But the way that I see it, guys, is these AAA titles that that sell millions upon millions upon millions of copies, I'm not usually one to stay on the current trend of gaming. But when we move on to the next generation of gaming, a lot of these games are going to be very easy to find for heavily discounted prices. So for me, I'd rather buy those games, and eventually give them a try, when they are fairly cheap. But for now, I'm in no rush to own them whatsoever. Now, my second rule, it's something that I've talked to a lot of my friends about, and that is, even though I love the anime style games, I truly do, but I never collect imports, especially for games. Now, the reason why that I don't do that is that it is all about managing costs. For me, I often ask myself, what is the real point for me to buy an import? There are some imports, I'm sure, for platformers and shoot 'em ups that that you can play without understanding the Japanese language or being unable to read kanji. But this is one of the ways that I limit my collecting to never get out of hand, because it's not something that really appeals to me. Besides, I really appreciate the effort, when a company takes an anime title and brings it over to North America to translate it and to do English voice dialogue for it. Because strangely enough, guys, you know, I am a big fan of anime, but you know, something that would be blasphemy to most anime fans is, you know, a lot of times I do prefer the dubbed version over the subtitled version, you know, about 80 to 90% of the time. You know, it's just, I make the choice not to collect imports, even though I'm sure I'm missing out on a ton of great anime style games. But for me, it's all about managing costs, you know, because if I start spending money on imports, you know, I would never have enough money left, you know, to buy some of the more hard to find anime titles, you know, for earlier systems. And for me, it's just something that, you know, I don't really need. The only time I will ever break the import rule is that if it's other video game merchandise. You know, I do have a few items in my house that you know, that I had to get specifically from Japan. You know, my Xenogears Perfect Works art book and history about Xenogears. You know, that's a Japanese exclusive item. You know, one of the things I would love to own is the Xenogears vinyl album. You know, you could only get that, you know, in Japan at the Square Enix store. You know, all my video game soundtracks, you know, they obviously come from Japan. You know, my wife's Parasite Eve art book, you know, that came from Japan as well. But that's the only other time I will break the import rule. You know, for me, I just don't want to collect physical versions of imports because it's not something that I really need, and I kind of feel like that, you know, it's money going to waste. You know, there are much better things I would rather spend my money on than actually spending money on import titles that will never make its way to North America. My third rule, guys, is that I never keep games sealed. Ever. Because I don't collect video games for their monetary value. It's not something that has ever really appealed to me. You know, it's just a cruel twist of irony that, you know, the anime style games tend to be like the rarest games to own, and they tend to be the most expensive. But sometimes I do pay the insane prices for them, but I never think about, you know, the whole resale factor of it. You know, for me, these are games that, you know, I've always wanted to play, but, you know, I could never have the money to afford them when I was younger. And the reason why I don't keep any of my games sealed is that I do it as a friendly reminder to myself of why I bought the game to begin with. Because I don't consider having a sealed game, you know, as a trophy. I really don't. You know, basically the first thing I do when I get any brand new game is that the seal comes off. Because eventually, you know, I do plan on playing it. And even though, you know, it looks like that I have a lot of games on my shelf, but, you know, in time, you know, I would like to think that, you know, I am going to get the chance to play every one of them, because, you know, as I'm getting older, guys, there are things that are becoming less and less appealing to me, and I do plan on sticking that I am giving up gaming after this generation. Except, you know, maybe I'll play the next Final Fantasy game if they release it for the new generation of consoles. But, you know, with regards to the hardcore collecting for the anime style games only, you know, I'm pretty much going from the NES generation to the PS3 generation, and that's it. So I never really see the appeal of keeping games sealed. You know, I basically break the seal to remind myself that, you know, I bought this game to play and not to have it as a trophy. Now, my fourth rule is a personal preference of mine, is that I never buy doubles of the same game, no matter how good the deal is. You know, when I take a game off my checklist, then that's it. You know, it could be one of, you know, the rarest PS1 games, or like anything along those lines. But, you know, if I already own a copy, there's no need for me to own another copy. You know, I don't want to be a hoarder. And for me, you know, I only want just one of one game, and that's it. And the funny thing is, guys, especially for the disc-based games, you know, the Sega Saturn, the Sega CD, the PS1 stuff, and even the PS2 stuff, you know, I don't really think that these games in my collection are going to retain a lot of value because I spend so much time trying to complete them. And you know, when you put anywhere from 1 to 300 hours into a game, you know, it's going to cause light scratches on the game that, you know, is obviously going to diminish the value. But for me, I complete games because it's something that's really fun to me. It's an accomplishment that I set out for myself, and it's like I said before, guys, once I actually complete a game, I retire it to the shelf and it stays on the shelf. And for me, I see really no need to own a double of the same game, because I don't want to take advantage of that. You know, if someone else has never had the opportunity to play that game before, then, you know, I don't want to take that opportunity away just because, you know, I seen a game, you know, for a really cheap price. You know, I think one time, you know, I think I seen a copy of Valkyrie Profile, you know, for about 30 bucks, you know, for PS1. And even though I spent, I think, 120 on my copy, there was no need for me to pick it up. Because, you know, I already had my copy. I was already happy with the condition of it. You know, could I have bought it and maybe sold it for a little bit of a profit? Sure, but, you know, I love the Valkyrie Profile series. It's one of my favorite RPG series of all time, and I just pretty much thought to myself, you know what, someone else would probably like to play that, and I know for a game that cheap is not going to last for very long. So any of the games that, you know, that you've seen on my gaming shelf, there are no doubles. Everything is completely individual, and I only plan on ever owning one copy of each game that I would eventually like to own. Now, the last rule that I have is something I think that's going to piss a lot of people off. It's a rule that I've always had, even though it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. You know, I've gotten into a lot of heated debates, you know, with my friends about it. But it's just a personal preference of mine. And what that rule is that I firmly believe in paying for a game for what it's truly worth. For me, I can't live with myself, or I feel bad when I see what I know is an expensive game for a really cheap price. And I know a lot of people would take advantage of that opportunity, and trust me, I don't blame you. You know, we don't really live in a great economy right now. And, you know, to own really good video games, it shouldn't be entitled to people that just have, you know, a lot of money. And for me, you know, if I have the money to spend, you know, to own something I would like to have, you know, eventually I am going to spend the money, but I don't see it as me owning something. I see it as, you know, helping someone out as well. And the reason why I say that is that I don't really believe that a lot of video games are overpriced. You know, a lot of times I think in a lot of retro stores, I think video games are adequately priced. You know, I think a Black Label copy of Symphony of the Night, if it's in mint condition, I think it's a $60 game. I think Panzer Dragoon is a $200 to $250 game. You know, I think Xenogears is about a $50 to $80 game. I think Valkyrie Profile is about an $80 to $120 game. And, you know, sometimes, you know, people, unfortunately, you know, they can't afford those prices. And, you know, it's kind of a crying shame because, you know, I think there are just too many people, you know, when it comes to collecting that, you know, that they only care about the monetary value of what a game is worth. But the funny thing is, guys, is that some of the rarest games that are available for specific systems, you know, you're ignoring the number one fact. Games like Panzer Dragoon Saga, Suikoden 2, Valkyrie Profile, and a few others, they may be expensive games, but the more important thing to understand is that these games are actually good, despite whatever their price tag is. And, you know, it's just very unfortunate that, you know, the price keeps going up on these games, because to play good games should not be entitled, you know, to people, you know, who have a lot of money. I really wish everybody could have that opportunity. And, you know, as the years keep passing by, you know, more retro games are getting more and more expensive. And you know, when it comes to retro stores, you know, I can understand, you know, why they have the prices they do. They need to stay in business. You know, it's just a cruel fate like that. You know, sometimes they have to charge the ridiculous prices just to make sure that they make a profit, so you know they can pay their rent, and you know that that they can keep their store in business. You know, there's a local store here in St. John's called Netherworld Collectibles, and you know, and I bought, you know, a lot of video game stuff from this guy. You know, he probably has some of the best prices on video games, you know, in the entire city. But every time I buy stuff from him, you know, he always tries to give me a deal, because, you know, I do buy stuff from him a lot. You know, he always tries to take $5 to $10 off the price. And you know, I tell him, no. You know, I'd rather pay it for what it's worth. Because who knows, you may need that extra $5 to $10, you know, to make next month's rent, or to keep your business going. And you know, with so many retro stores closing down, you know, I would love to see my retro video game stores, you know, in my area just stay in business for as long as possible. And for me, guys, living in my province, you know, there aren't many opportunities, you know, to get a lot of really good games. You know, it's a highly competitive market here. You know, sometimes, you know, I have no other choice, you know, but to pay the expensive eBay prices. But I think that's one of the reasons why that, you know, I stick to anime style games only, because I think it's a realistic goal. And I think, you know, when it comes to collecting, you know, you really have to look at what you're collecting, and you just have to say to yourself, you know, yes, I collect this because I enjoy it, but what is realistic to me? You know, what is my main goal, you know, out of this collection? You know, one other story I remember is, you know, there was one PS2 game that, you know, I really wanted to find for a really long time. It wasn't a rare game, but you know, it was kind of an uncommon game. You didn't see it a lot, and that was the Full Metal Alchemist 2 game for the PS2, The Case of the Crimson Elixir. And you know, for the longest time, I had a really hard time finding it. And I remember going to the flea market one time, and I seen this kid, this like 8 or 9-year-old kid, and he had a bunch of PS2 titles for sale for about $5 each. And for me, and that Full Metal Alchemist 2 game was one of those games, but I just didn't feel right, because I knew that the game was worth more than that. So, you know, I said, you know, I'll pay you the $5, but you know what, here's 20. For a total of 25. And he said, you know, thanks mister, you know, I'm going to use that on my, I'm going to use that for my summer holiday. And you know, I felt pretty good about it, because, you know, not only was I getting the game that I obviously wanted to own, but for me it was kind of helping someone out as well. Because for me, I don't care about the monetary value of my collection. Do I own anime style games that are rare and that demand a high price? Sure. But it's not the rarity why I grab these games to begin with. It's just that, for the most part, all the games that I collect are really good games, and they are games that I've always wanted to play. And unfortunately, guys, just because, you know, I do pay the crazy prices on eBay, it wouldn't surprise me if someone like me is probably responsible, you know, for keeping video game prices as high as they are, you know, especially when I do pay the insane prices. But sometimes, you know, you got no other choice, especially, you know, when a game is really hard to find, you know, when you want to play it so bad. So anyway, guys, those are my 5 fundamental rules when it comes to collecting. You know, I really hope you enjoyed this video. This will probably be the last video I'll get up while I'm home over the summer holidays. I am leaving to go to Seattle on Thursday. You know, I'm going to be there for PAX Prime. You know, my wife and I, you know, we have 3-day passes, and you know, I hope to see a lot of you guys, you know, at the YouTube meetup, supposedly at the entrance of PAX at 3 p.m. Pacific time on September the 1st. So I really wanted to get a how to complete video up, guys, but unfortunately some days there just isn't enough time. So anyway, the next time I'll get home will be over Christmas time. So I'll try to get a few more videos up then, but but I really enjoyed the break, guys, and I really hope that you've enjoyed the content that I've put out over the last 2 weeks. So anyway, guys, and for one episode I at least had to get the shades out. So anyway, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best. Later.